Yeah.
In order to work more efficiently inside of After Effects, you'll want to customize your preferences. In this video, we're going to go over some of the key preferences where you should focus your attention. Now, to get to preferences on the Mac, you click on After Effects. In Windows, it's under the Edit menu. Now I'm going to go to After Effects, Preferences, and choose General. In the general settings of preferences, you can specify the levels of undo. I recommend leaving yours at 32, but you can increase the number. Just understand if you make it too large, you could possibly slow down your system. Now the next preference you should check out is down here, Default Spatial Interpolation to Linear. Now if you're unfamiliar with the terms, don't worry. We're going to get into these terms in the animation chapter. For now, you want to go ahead and select that selection box. The next section you should check out is the Previews area. In Previews, we can go to the GPU information. That's your graphics processor or your graphics card. When you click on this GPU information, this is where you can specify your ray tracing. If your system has a supported graphics card, you can change your processing to GPU, and that'll definitely speed up your workflow. On occasion, if you have it set to GPU and you notice After Effects acting strangely, you might want to just change it back to CPU and see if that fixes your issue. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Down here at the bottom, you can change the duration of your audio preview. Typically, I find 30 seconds works perfectly well for me, but if you work with longer footage, you may want to increase this preview. In the display section, I want to go ahead and enable hardware acceleration for the composition layer and footage panels. If your system is particularly old, you may not want to select this option, but for most modern systems, this will definitely help speed up your workflow. In the import section, if you work a lot with stills, you can specify the length of that still. I leave mine set to the length of the composition, but let's say you're importing 50 stills to do moves on, and you only want them to be on page for about 4 seconds apiece. You can just go ahead and change the duration to 4 seconds, and then when you import, everything will already be trimmed in terms of its length. Now we don't need to worry about output or grids and guides. Labels just allow you to choose specific color codes for the kind of footage that you're working with. For example, any video file I have color-coded to aqua. So if you look at layer 3 here, that's a video file and it's color-coded to aqua. If you like using color coding in your day-to-day life, you may very well want to change some of these preferences. Should you decide you want to change a color, you can just go ahead and click on the pull down and choose one of the preset colors. If you don't want to use one of the presets, for example, if I choose aqua here, I could go ahead and change what that aqua color would be, and then that way video would be updated to my new color. Media and disk cache is something that we definitely want to pay attention to. The top button here will allow you to specify a folder where you save that cache. All you have to do is click on the button and navigate through your file browser to go ahead and choose the specific folder where you'd like the cache to be. Disk cache is something that After Effects uses as you're working, so it doesn't have to process everything in RAM or on the video card. Most of the time, I try and use an SD drive since those drives are extraordinarily fast. If you don't have access to an SD drive, you may want to go ahead and use a fast RAID. And if you don't have access to that, you want to just use the fastest drive you can, and that'll make your life a little bit easier. As long as your cache is on a separate drive from your footage, you'll get an optimum experience when you're working in After Effects. Down here, the media cache is a very similar situation. I typically choose an external folder, and a lot of times I'll choose the same folder where my disk cache is, but you can choose a separate folder just for organization's sake. On occasion, as you're working in After Effects, you'll notice things function kind of strangely, and a lot of times you can fix that just by emptying the disk cache. So we can do that by clicking this button and then cleaning the database and cache. That's just a little time-saving troubleshooting technique. Now let's jump to memory and multiprocessing. As you're working in After Effects, it works with RAM and shares that RAM between these 5 applications. Now, most of the time when we're working, I'll just be working in one of these applications. But it's important to understand you can allocate the amount of RAM shared between all these applications. And once you allocate that in either of these applications, it'll propagate that setting across all of them. Now I recommend going ahead and enabling render multi-frames simultaneously. This won't necessarily happen when you're using RAM Preview, but when you go to render your projects, it'll make things move more smoothly. If you find you're working on more than one thing at a given time, let's say you have a word processing document open and your After Effects file open, you want to go ahead and make sure to reserve a CPU for another application. So many computers have multiple cores in their processors. So for our settings, I'm going to go ahead and click on this and change this to at least one CPU for another application. Now the RAM allocation per CPU you should set based on the size of the resolution you're working with. I usually have mine set to at least 1 gig. For higher resolution HD, you want to make sure to choose 1.5 gigs or 2 gigs. Just understand if you increase this number, it may decrease the actual number of CPUs that it can use at any given time. So I'll go ahead and just leave that at 1 so I can use 3 CPUs. Now that's going to round out our tour of preferences. I'm just going to show you one last thing before we go. If we go to the General section, down here at the bottom, we can click this button to show our preferences in our file browser. Since I'm on a Mac, it'll show me in the Finder. In Windows, it'll show you in Explorer. When you click on this, After Effects will show you where the preferences live on your system. Should you decide you ever need to throw away your preferences, you can go ahead and do that from your file browser. Now we can go ahead and click OK since we have our preferences set up and we're ready to continue working inside of After Effects. Yeah.